Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Her Journey Towards Change, where our vision is to empower women to move forward while realizing their unique strengths and God-given talents to align with the biblical perspective and what she feels is God's direction for her. And today is Tuesday. And on Tuesdays, I have a guest come on each week for Tuesday's talk. And today, my guest is Rachel Rains. And Rachel finds tremendous joy equipping and encouraging maturing believers to find meaning in the journey this side of heaven, especially through the widely shared campaign, #LoveChallenge. Rachel currently resides in southern Oklahoma with her amazing husband, DeWayne, and admits to frequently bragging about her true pride and joy, her adulting daughter, #StormyGirl. And I also want to add that she blogs over at A Meaningful Journey, This Side of Heaven, and that's found at ameaningfuljourney.com. Hey, how are you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing great, Laura. Thank you for having me. I'm honored and privileged to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could come on and talk to me today. Now, you have been writing about this thing called #the Love Challenge from what I've been reading since 2013. Is that right?
That's right. I issued the first Love Challenge in early 2013, probably like in the first or second week of January. And it was at the end of the height of the big ice bucket challenge. And at the time I thought what the world really needs is a love challenge. So I started out by just issuing it really to myself. And then I, invited my friends and family to join.
Well, I totally remember when that the ice bucket challenge came along, and I remember thinking, oh, please don't anybody challenge me. And I did get challenged, but I never did do it. But it's amazing how something like that can go viral and everybody can do it. It would be even more awesome if we could get people to get the #Love Challenge to go viral. So I want to go ahead and get into the topic of this. You say that, let me look at my notes here. You say that the Love Challenge is a how-to instruction guide to set ourselves straight in an unstraight world. And I love that thought because we are most definitely in an unstraight world. Can you share what the Love Challenge is and how or what led you to start this?
Well, it's really a strategy for tackling the greatest challenge ever issued, and that was the command to love one another. Loving the lovable is easy. Loving the unlovable is so much harder. And that's where the Love Challenge comes in. And it's really a commitment that I make to myself every year to be so full of God's love that I no longer want to lash out and say hurtful things, or I no longer want to, commit unkind deeds to others. And really, it's a way of pointing others back to Jesus.
Do you find that hard to do?
Daily.
Daily, yes.
It's a mammoth struggle for all of us, and it's a struggle that mankind has struggled with ever since Eve took that very first bite. And that's what I mean by setting the world straight. That's a little bit of my Enneagram 1 coming out there, because I'm a perfectionist and I want everything to be perfect, and I want the world to be set straight. I want the world to be loving and kind. I want to be loving and kind to others, but it's such a struggle. It's a daily struggle for all of us as humans.
It is. I'm an Enneagram 9, which is a people pleaser. So, and I often take that test just to see if I change any. And so far, I'm working on it. But I still worry about what other people think, and I always want to please them and make them happy. You said in one of your blog posts that your quest was to be so full of God's love that I could not fathom speaking an unkind word or committing an unkind deed. And that I have to say that is a brave and bold thought. With so much inequality and hatred in our world today, this is a big undertaking, but it's possible, right?
That's right.
And you have 3 practical ways of doing this and a challenge that goes along with each. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Well, the first one, you say that viewing others as God does. So how do we do this? And what is your challenge that goes along with this? How do we view others as God does?
Well, I like to say, viewing others through a lens of understanding. And there's this great book that I read by Anne Graham Lotz, and it's called Wounded by God's People. Both of my grandfathers were in the ministry. So, and I've walked through a lot of trauma in my life. I've been hurt by God's people. I've been hurt by family. We all have, right? And so when we view other people through a lens of understanding, when we're able to grieve their wounds, it makes it easier for us to forgive what they've done to us. And it also equips us with the compassion needed to not act out and respond in unloving ways. So that's one way that I like to tackle it, is diving. So the challenge would be there is to dive deep into learning someone's story. In their story, you're gonna learn about their wounds and their pain and their past and what they carry and how that informs their actions. And I can learn to not take things so personal sometimes when I view it in that way. And it makes it easier not to respond in an unloving way. So my challenge,
kind of like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's hard to do. Sometimes that's really hard to do because all we want to do is really think of ourselves. But like you say, to have the love that God wants us to have, we have to basically be selfless, and not think of ourselves and think of the other person.
Yes. Selfless.
Yes, selfless.
Yes.
Number 2, you say weeping and grieving and praying for wounded souls. What does this one look like? And what does the challenge that goes along with that one look like?
Well, there's this great quote by Charles Spurgeon, who was a Victorian pastor, that said to be a winner of souls, you first have to be a weeper of souls. And so I'll just kind of go into this story very quickly and not give too much detail. But the year escapes me, but when my daughter was in college, she was she was the victim of a hate crime. And as a parent, it was very infuriating and it was very distressing. And without giving too much details, all I could think of was, and I'm a crier, I'll try not to cry, but all I could think of, whoa, was the misery of this woman that she could carry out such a inhumane act towards my daughter, who was really just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So the kind of blind hate that would lead someone, and that's a lot about what's going in our world today, is there's just such a blind hate that we can't really even see past that behavior to see what's driving it and what pain that person must be carrying that they could carry out such an act of violence.
I'm so sorry for that, for your daughter. So what challenge goes along with this that might help?
Well, I would say, and you could even dial that way back to just the person who annoys you. Right?
Right.
And or the professional person who makes your, who gives you grief every day. It's just praying for that person, because their past informs their behavior. All of our pasts inform our behavior. And so just praying for that person, grieve for their wounds, pray that God will bless them. In the face of unkindness, I myself have had to pray, for God to bless that person, even though they were unkind to me. And really, when you pray for people, especially your enemies, pray, although God might change them, he might change their behavior, but what it really does is it increases your compassion and your mercy and your grace towards that person. You're really the person who is changed when you choose to pray for your enemies.
So true. And while you were talking, I was thinking that to pray for your enemy also, it's kind of like you have to be mindful. It kind of makes me think, well, I think about those enemies, but at the same time, maybe I am somebody's enemy as well and don't even know it. So that puts me into a different mindset to where I feel like I have to pray to help me come across as not being the enemy to somebody. Because, sometimes I come across people and for some reason, we just rub shoulders the wrong way. There's really nothing that causes it. It's just that our personalities clash, especially if you're at work and you're working with somebody and you just don't get along. Well, that tension ends up you can become enemies while you're at work. So I remember, I say this because back when I worked in a classroom with another teacher, we clashed. And it really bothered me. I came home from work and I cried, not wanting to go back to work the next day just because I knew how much stress I was going to face. And I realized that this is not the way I want to come across. So I went out of my way and I talked to my boss, and I remember that there was a personality test that we could take that told us about what color we fit into. I can't remember the name of that test, but we had somebody come in, it was like a coach, and she came in and talked to us and told us about it. And it actually, after we finished all the questions, it put me in a category and her in a category of a different color. And then she brought us together and told us how we see each other, how she saw me and how I saw her. And it opened both of our eyes to realize that we both needed to open up and look at each other in a different way. So this one resonates with me a lot.
I love that. I love that story, Laura. And that's a lot about the Enneagram. As my family learned each other's Enneagram, we were able to extend so much compassion towards each other. So I love that. And, there have been a lot of times that I knew that I personally needed the change. Maybe I was really angry about a situation and I just had to pray, for God to, just change my heart, give me the peace that I need, give me the comfort that I need, give me the words, the forgiveness, So yeah, it's a prayer that goes both ways for sure.
So number 3 was, let's see, it goes holding every thought captive and understanding who the real enemy is, which this leads right into what we were talking about. So what do you mean by who the real enemy is, and what challenge comes along with that one?
Well, that kind of piggybacks on what we were just talking about. Sometimes we can get into tiffs or whatever, especially with our spouses.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be like, what are we yelling about? What are we arguing about? And I think it's really the enemy, and knowing who the real enemy is. The real enemy is not my coworker that gets under my skin. The real enemy is not the person who perpetrates the crime. The real enemy is Satan. And when we can see that Maybe perhaps, that person is so far removed from God, they're so far down a rabbit hole that they don't even know God.
Right.
And just understand that the real enemy is Satan, and he's present in this world. And I think that's one of the biggest under assumptions we as Christians make, is that the devil is a real formidable present enemy in the
Oh,
world.
yes, I agree with that. But, we go out of our way and God is recognized, but Satan, for some reason, is not recognized as much. I don't understand why. Even, I mean, I'm just going on my experience, but even when you attend church, sermons aren't as much about hell as it is about heaven. And hell and Satan are both right there. They're there all the time waiting. I think he's just waiting for that moment for us to be weak. And in our world today, there's so many opportunities for people to be weak. And so what goes along with the challenge with this one?
Well, talking about being weak, we're all susceptible to that. I'm susceptible to the enemy. The enemy knows how to push my buttons through my family members, through my coworkers. He knows how to push those buttons. And if I'm not so full of God's love all the time, then I'm going to be, like you said, susceptible to, the enemy's attacks. So holding every thought captive is the number one way that you can implement this in your life, in the love challenge, is holding every thought captive. As far as challenging, let me think about that a minute. Well,
you say that, I read that you say that our emotions are no longer the boss of me. And I like that thought. So, and you say redirecting your thoughts.
Yes. So by holding the thought captive, before I say that piece of gossip, before I say that unkind thing, when I'm holding my thoughts captive, then I'm able to predetermine my actions, because thoughts predetermine actions. If I'm holding a thought captive, then I can hold that thought back, and I can change the course of that conversation. I can change what I'm emitting out into the world.
Right.
And, understanding the enemy gives you that freedom. The presence of an enemy gives you that freedom to extend grace, forgiveness. So that would be the challenge, is just to identify ways that the enemy likes to attack you through your family, through your own selfish nature, your own selfish pride or arrogance, or whatever it is that kind of is your hiccup. God is going to attack you through, or not God, but Satan's going to attack you through that. So identifying those ways. And here's another thing is, an unwilling partner will dispel a lot of, grief and confrontation. If you're holding every thought captive, if you're being an unwilling partner in dispute, you're going to dispel a lot of situations. But holding, my daughter and I, we used to say, when we would gossip, we would say we were solving the world's problems. So holding thought captive, it really helps me to, not say that unkind thing. It may not even be to that person. It may just be in passing,
Right. Well, I really appreciate all of these thoughts that go along, and the challenges that go along with this love challenge. I appreciate all of them. They've been very helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I also want to talk about, you say that you talk about the dose of holiness right now, because as you explain, that holiness, no one, if you're not holy, no one will see the Lord. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Can you
Um,
share that, briefly share what that means and how this holiness ties in with the love challenge?
sure. Well, I've studied just in recent years. I've really studied love. There's about 300 scriptures about love, and
Wow.
I've studied about 50 of them very, very closely. And sometimes I'll find one and it's like, well, I knew this one, but it's resonating to me now in such a different way than maybe that it had before. And this holiness, it's actually scripture, Hebrews 12 through 12:14. And when I came on it, I was just like, wow. I wish there was an emoji button that was just like, every time I read something.
Yes, that'd be good.
Like, oh, wow, that resonated with me. And so, yeah, so it's just that particular scripture just came out of the woodwork for me a month or so ago. And I don't have the scripture right in front of me, but it's basically no one can see God without holiness in our lives. And that's where the first half of the challenge comes, is to be so full of God's love. And in Hebrews 12:14, I kind of jotted this down because I don't have it by memory. Let me see where that is. But no, maybe that was another, that goes back to something different. But in holiness, you have compassion and kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. All of the fruits of spirits are wrapped up, in being so full of God's love. And that's how we're full of God's love. And that's how we're holy. The thing is that, I'm far from perfect. I struggle daily with the love challenge. There's that passage where Paul says, why do I struggle to do the very thing, that I know I should do, but yet I do the exact opposite. And that's just where I am. But,
So the holiness is not it's not like one of those holier than thou concepts. It's total opposite.
exactly. It's, yeah. And the thing is,
Because
we
a
may
lot of
be,
people think of the word holiness
exactly,
as something
exactly.
that is scary to them, or as something that they
That's
can't.
right.
So you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? I'm
Yes. Yes, I do. And because, I like to tell people, because both my grandparents were in ministry, I think I was maybe 17 years old before I ever attended a church service where someone either wasn't on stage delivering the message, playing the piano, playing the organ, directing the choir, all of the above. I grew up at the foot pedals of a piano on a church stage. That was my playground as a child. I was at the church a lot. Church played a tremendous role in my entire family tree. It's not like I went to grandma's and escaped it. It was just a different church.
yes, yes.
On both sides of the family. But what I want to say is we may be the only God that people experience. And if we're not filled and consumed with godly things, then people aren't seeing God. They're seeing something called Christianity that they don't understand, and they really don't want to be a part of. Well, like, if that's Christianity, if that's
Yeah,
God, I don't want a part of it. And that's really my heartbeat for the love challenge, is I want people to see God through me.
this is such a good topic. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I can see how heartfelt it is with you, and I can see how important it is to you. So thank you for coming on and sharing all of this. You also have a free download for everybody. It is a
Yeah.
love challenge card. What is that?
Yes. Well, I don't remember if we talked about this. I know we thought that we might, but so funny. Just recently, I was playing around with different hashtags and things like that, and and it dawned on me, wow, the Love Challenge shares an acronym with tender loving care. And I thought, wow, that's so perfect, because that's exactly what God's love is it's tender, it's it's loving, and he cares for us. He cares deeply about our lives. And anyway, I've always wanted to get around to making a card that people could print out, just kind of as a visual reminder. So I'm not exactly for sure when this is airing, but when this is airing, I'm going to run this blog about tender loving care along with this, and people can go and download it. Actually, they can download it now, but they won't even hear about this for a couple of weeks. But it's there to download, and it's just a little reminder card. And the actual Love Challenge is to be so full of God's love, I could not fathom speaking an unkind word or unkind deed. And I reissue it to myself every single year. My family is probably more invested than ever this year. Sometimes my family will remind me, the Love Challenge.
Oh, wow.
And my husband, just a while back, he says, man, this Love Challenge thing is really hard. I'm like, yes, welcome to my world.
It's great that you got those accountability partners, though.
Yes. And then, I have a writing coach that I've been working with, and I was kind of telling her about some issues I was experiencing with some different, technical matters. And she said, I see, that's kind of hard for you to complain about that, being you're doing the Love Challenge and all. I'm like, yes, it's when you commit, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart, because it immediately shows you all the areas in your life. And I think we would all be surprised at where and how we could improve on being more kind, more gentle, more loving in our responses and in our daily walk.
Well,
and I'm still failing every day. I still pick myself up, and when I fail, it's sometimes if it's a big failing, I beat myself up tremendously over it. I do, but I know that I'm just getting closer with every failure.
So aren't we all? I love this whole aspect of it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
It just opens up a whole new world. And we're only into, well, February's almost over, but the new year is still young.
That's right.
2021 can really be a good thing coming in if we could just all be mindful of this Love Challenge. So thank you for sharing that with me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Where would everybody go if they wanted to look you up? Where's that one place that you would want them to find you?
Sure. A meaningfuljourney.com is, where you'll find all things A Meaningful Journey and home of the Love Challenge. So, I regularly blog about the Love Challenge on my A Meaningful Journey. And you can subscribe right at the bottom to print the little card. I have a wallpaper too, if someone, wanted to shoot me a direct message and say, hey, I'd love to have that wallpaper as well.
That'd be great.
For your phones, but ameaningfuljourney.com, and just look for the little subscribe button, and you can get that little reminder card. And I just love, I love hearing from people, and how they're being challenged in their lives. I love hearing that.
So can we find you on Instagram also? You're there
sure.
too, right?
Okay. Instagram is my favorite place to be. So
that's where all the pictures are.
That's right.
I love it.
I feel my most creative self in Instagram.
All right. We heard that. Everybody go find her over on Instagram.
Yeah. So A Meaningful Journey is Instagram. Facebook is A Meaningful Journey blog. Okay. And then, of course, ameaningfuljourney.com.
Thank you. I appreciate this so much.
Thank you, Laura. I'm just so finally glad to meet you. And
you too.
I wanted to say on camera, the part of my journey moving to Southern Oklahoma was because my mother, although we didn't know at the time, that God just told us the first week of January in 2020, he said, you're moving. Not only are you moving not only are you leaving Nashville and moving, but you're moving outside of your hometown. And so you were one of the people online who really who reached out to me. That was such a hard time to be here. And we didn't even know my mom had cancer when we moved. We just knew God was telling us. And we lost her several months later. And it was a very hard journey in the middle of a pandemic. And it was people like you who reached out over and over online.
Well, thank you. And I know what it's like for people to be there. I know what it feels like when you.
So I want to thank you publicly and have everyone know what a wonderful person you are, because you did not have to do that. You did that because that's who you are, and I want people to see that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I love following everything that you write. And I know everything comes from the heart. I think that's why I enjoy reading everything that you write. I can get to know you through your words without even having to meet you. So that is a blessing right there. So thank you. It's been great meeting you today. Maybe one day we can get to meet each other in person.
That's right. Next time I'm in Nashville, maybe you can drive up and we can haunt a favorite coffee shop.
That sounds great. I would love that.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.